I am Matthew Hopkins, Witchfinder.
This is the Requiem Metal Podcast, episode 58, Cathedral, Part 2. Just heard Hopkins, the Witchfinder General, from the Carnival Bizarre, from the Cathedral, which we did many episodes ago, part 2. This is Requiem Metal Podcast. I'm Mark.
And I am Jason. And as Mark sort of got us in there as quickly as possible, this is Cathedral part 2. And, boy, I don't even remember when. I think it was the middle of last summer, actually, that we did Cathedral part 1. But don't quote me on that.
Yeah, it was quite a while ago.
So it has been a little bit. And the early part of Cathedral, just to kind of give you a brief little highlight, of course, Lee Dorian is the band leader. If you're unknowledge, or Lee Dorian kind of was one of the key founders, him and Gary Jennings, who's the guitar player. And Dorian, of course, came out of background with Napalm Death as one of the vocalists and stuff. And
Jennings came out of Acid Rain.
Acid Rain, yeah. And they had equal love for Black Sabbath, Candlemass, those type of bands.
Witchfinder General.
Witchfinder General, of course, which you just heard an allusion to with Hopkins, the Witchfinder General.
Which is a very interesting Vincent Price movie.
There were some Vincent Price samples that you just heard in there. And
I'm Hopkins, Witchfinder.
Yeah, exactly. But anyways, just to kind of give you a brief kind of rundown, they started off with Force of Equilibrium, which is kind of a classic the doom metal genre, much like several weeks ago that we heard some Candlemass stuff, much like Nightfall or Epicus Doomicus in terms of establishing the whole genre. And then Cathedral started to kind of expand their repertoire, if you will, and we left the last episode off with the pretty experimental EP, Cosmic Requiem, where they did some crazy psychedelic stuff on
Voyage of the Homo Sapien. Yeah, there's some pretty kind of, they start to get a little, some could say indulgent, but I kind of went along for the ride. It was pretty entertaining.
Yeah, and I have everything that they've done, and I kind of, I look back on some of the records, and we'll talk later about Supernatural Birth Machine, for instance, or Caravan Beyond Redemption. And at the time, I think I got it. Like, it's not, I never hated a Cathedral record. I just liked some more than others, but I was always excited to see one and put one on. And Carnival Bizarre is sort of to me, it's like the end of an era. It's kind of the bookend of that original era of Cathedral, the longer epic songs with kind of many different movements.
And the more, the further they got along, it turned into almost like this weird hybrid of, because he's got a weird fascination with Japanese monster movies, and then like Knights Templar, Tombs of the Blind Dead stuff,
the horror movies,
and it started becoming like Iron Maiden with all of these weird movie references that were tied in, and like these bizarre,
and you threw some psychedelic things into, you bring.
And the Hopkins,
the Apes, and
the Hopkins EP itself they redo Fire.
Yeah, the Arthur Brown stuff. Which that
and on that also they have I think it's called Purple Twilight, which is almost a disco song. Just starts out that do 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 do, like almost like a I Was Made for Loving You kind of bass line to it.
Yeah, I remember that. I have the Hopkins EP. It's pretty cool EP. It's different, but I think everyone, this record, the Carnival Bizarre, I remember picking this up at a metal record store that was in the town where Mark and I grew up in. It was only around for a year. I think Carnival Bizarre is 95 or 96? Do you remember?
Oh, jeez. I'm going to have to...
I'll look right here. But when the record came out...
it's 95.
Okay. This is the first Cathedral that I bought brand new, if that makes sense. Ethereal Mirror we had picked up.
Well, like when it came out.
Yep, we were waiting for this. Like we were reading about it, and
it had a lot of push behind it, because actually that is the whole Columbia deal with Earache is sour as some of those things went. I think that really got Cathedral out to a lot of people that wouldn't have normally been into it. Not a mass audience, but people that are probably more in the Caius camp and Trouble and stuff like that.
Yeah,
weren't as deep into the metal stuff.
It almost attracted a stoner rock kind of crowd, which was odd, and that's going to set Cathedral on a really kind of different path over the next few records that we'll kind of be talking about.
Yeah, and actually this is around this time is kind of when Electric Wizard and I can't think of the other ones, but Rise Above Records, there was a bunch of pretty interesting bands that came out at that era, kind of like mixing the kind of song structures and aesthetics that Cathedral started. Like that was kind of like Lee's thing, was to put this thing forth. I think Morning Sign was one of the bands. female fronted.
No, Morning Sign was.
That's a Wrong Again band.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's Swedish death metal.
Maybe just Morning or something.
Might be. Yeah.
But yeah, all that stuff kind of came out here, and I think Lee kind of became like kind of the steward for the new doom genre. Not necessarily the stoner, but the kind of definitely the doom thing that was heavily entrenched in the whole Sabbath.
Yeah, and Carnival Bizarre in particular, as I said, it kind of ends the sort of, I don't want to call it the golden era of Cathedral, but the first cycle in a way musically, because it's still pretty drenched in the doom genre. You know, a tune like Hopkins is got that Sabbath riff kind of down pat. You know, I mean, it's starting. You could see Cathedral's kind of starting to lean. I don't want to use the word cheesier, but they're getting a little bit more free with being able to throw some kind of samples in there, and
they're
almost like Witchfinder General. You know, Witchfinder General almost was kind of laughable at times, even though they wrote sweet ass music. You know, but their lyrics and the imagery and
absolutely
some
horrible on Witchfinder General.
Yeah, and I'm not comparing Cathedral to that because still there's some very inventive lyrics on this record. You know, I mean, Inertia's Cave and Blue Light and some of that stuff is really pretty hip. You know, but you got tunes like Utopian Blaster, which was on that, which had Tony Iommi from Black Sabbath playing the guitar solo.
Probably the most boring song. I mean, like Electric Grave's an alright song. I mean, we had a lot of like even Palace of Fall of Majesty. I mean, it's a really good record, but we just kind of picked a couple of the more, I guess, not necessarily diverse, but we've got time constraints here as well.
Oh, so. Sure. Cathedral's always known for their long songs.
So we're going to go into a little bit. We've got like Night of the Seagulls is kind of a little bit more of a contemplative, breathy, piece that actually goes through several different
movements. It could fit on Soul Sacrifice EP or Ethereal Mirror, I think. I think it's probably the heaviest, most kind of focused song on the record, along with Fangalactic Supergoria, which is, if just that song title alone should tell you kind of where Cathedral's going. They're getting a little bit more kind of 70s, a little bit more psychedelic, a little more out there with
it's a little more Sid and Marty Krofft.
Yeah, exactly. Sid and Marty Krofft, good reference. But Fangalactic Supergoria, which we're going to open our next setup with, it features one of the most kind of killer riffs on this record. And it's very akin to Candlemass in a way, in terms of their ability to sort of, just launch songs forward in a momentous way with these sort of monstrous riffs, And
then, that's kind of the parts of Carnival Bizarre we're going to cover. And then we're going to kind of leapfrog Supernatural Birth Machine, which, when it came out, I got it. Here's the big thing with that one. In the United States, somebody had the bright idea, hey, stoner rock and Fu Manchu is really popular right now, so let's just put like a photograph of the band on the cover. That's cool. And I remember, I don't know if his
Lee in sunglasses and have him looking kind of like
and look what's in the sunglasses.
Yeah,
his own reflection. Whoa, deep, man.
Deep.
But
let's fuzz it out a little bit.
And I think the Dave Patchett stuff's on the inside.
It is.
But that was something that Lee was really pissed off. I remember about the U.S. offices of Earache putting this thing out.
And if you don't know what we're talking about, Dave Patchett. If you do yourself a favor, maybe we'll post.
He's got a pretty good website as well.
Yeah, maybe we'll post a link to his website.
And by the time this is out, the Force of Equilibrium reissue with a DVD documentary will be out by Earache.
And it'll have some stuff on Dave Patchett.
Dave Patchett's actually being interviewed around the table, just like the Carcass thing was.
But his imagery is almost synonymous with Cathedral. I mean, like when I think of Cathedral, I think of his covers and his ability to orchestrate sort of these Shakespearean Midsummer's Night's Dream fairies and unicorns and demons and dragons and medieval
surrealistic type. There's
it's like Hieronymus Bosch type stuff. The Spanish Renaissance guy, which he did some pretty twisted stuff with people getting eaten and in the mouth of hell, but. The cover to this it's a sweet cover, but again, in the U.S., as Mark was saying, you didn't get to see that cover when you were buying it in the store. You got to see what you perceived was a really lame Fu Manchu ripoff band.
And it looks like, I think that is as dumb as it sounds. That could probably have peppered a lot of people's initial, expectations listening to this record. It's not one of their best, but it's still like Stained Glass Horizon, Urko's Conquest, and
I'm a Suicide Asteroid guy myself.
It's an entertaining record, but we didn't feel that we really needed to cover it too much.
It's probably their weakest full-length record.
Yeah. And that was 96, and we're gonna basically just leave that out. We'll let you check out online. Here's some clips of that, but we're gonna go straight to Caravan Beyond Redemption with Voodoo Fire, which is one of their most not out song. It's not as crazy as like Voyage of the Homo Sapien, but it still has that kind of like all bets were off when they went in the studio to do this.
And we'll talk more about Caravan Beyond Redemption, the record it comes from, because there's a lot of different things kind of happening on here, and I saw this as the beginning of a comeback, because there were some heavy parts on this record, which there weren't heavy parts on Supernatural Birth Machine. Like nothing that jumped out. They seemed like they were really kind of thing going.
Yeah, they seemed like they were just kind of spinning their wheels a little bit on that. Even toward I think the end of Carnival Bizarre, it's like, okay, what new can we inject into this?
Exactly. And this also comes, and I hate to hammer this point down. I really think we maybe should be doing a documentary on this, but metal between 1996 and 1999 went through such, especially in Europe, went through such a bizarre stage. And if you were not Cradle of Filth or Dimmu Borgir or Emperor, there was very few innovations that were happening. You know what I mean? Like
that's all anybody wanted.
Yeah, exactly. You know, you wanted the sort of slicked up black metal stuff was very popular. Some of the kind of In Flames Colony kind of sound was sort of seeping through, but especially the cycle in England had played itself out. I mean, Paradise Lost, Cathedral, My Dying Bride, Anathema, we're all going through, I don't want to call it slumps, but they were going through identity crises in a way, in terms of trying to figure out what direction are we going to take our music from here. And I think Carnival Bizarre 96 and Caravan Beyond Redemption 97, I do believe, or somewhere in that realm.
Caravan was 98.
No, Supernatural Birth Machine, I'm sorry. 95, 96, yeah. And Caravan Beyond Redemption, again, is 98, and it's again, one of these half-hearted attempts to try and find a new direction. And I think there's some hints on that record that are kind of informing of where Cathedral is going to sort of kind of rise like a phoenix. Phoenix rising.
Yes.
And kind of make their kind of second era mark on, and we'll get into that after you hear Voodoo Fire, because it's hard to contextualize that unless you know the song. But so anyways, we got a couple nice samples. These are, as Mark was saying, two of the, I think, better examples of where Cathedral was at and near the end of this first cycle, with Fangalactic, Supergoria, and Night of the Seagulls. And then, of course, we'll close things off with Voodoo Fire.
You won't be disappointed.
Yeah, jungle magic is spreading fast.
Nothing but this black euphoria. Energy forces from the grave, soul invaders of mystique, as cadavers we roam the plains, abandoning chains of flesh. Uncoil the serpent, in duality are one. Between life and death, find the threshold. You are born. Wake yourself from life. Back from centuries you died. Ahead of
Du sang bien rouge pour te rendre fidèle. Non, souci.
Voodoo! Fire! Magic lady of the ocean stands high on the Voodoo mountain. Society just a Congo dance to the serpent queen chanting. Baby, feel the demons burning in the dice hostile world to the snake goblins are falling. Lame old soul possession and sacrifice. Voodoo, fire setting your world alight. Voodoo, fire, far away as she beats way beyond its 13 moons. Solar system of Lucifer in a ritual of cosmic doom. Baby, but when evil is calling, zombie rise to the voodoo cries from your mortal tomb awaken. Flame old, soul possession and sacrifice. Voodoo, fire setting your world alight. Alright.
What are those drums?
Ah, senor, they are voodoo drums. Jungle magic is spreading fast in a global manifestation. Necromantic system bows to a black massive invocation. Tell me the secrets of the future. Stop the flames of the burning world. Resurrect our dead creator. Hold tight. Saddle up your reins for a rocket night. Voodoo, fire setting your world alight. Voodoo, fire.
Soul possession and sacrifice, Mark.
That's
Voodoo.
right. Voodoo magic is getting fast. Hot.
Yeah, getting fast. Jungle magic is
Jungle
spreading
magic is
fast.
spreading fast.
That's got to be one of the killer lines.
So that was that was Voodoo Fire off Caravan Beyond Redemption, Night of the Seagulls off the Carnival Bizarre, and Fangalactic, Supergoria. or Supergoria, that's how he pronounced it. But hey,
I love that song title. It's great. But Voodoo Fire, I mean, I had to review this record, and so I kind of have like a distinctive memory of getting Caravan Beyond Redemption, and Chris was way out of Cathedral. Chris has never really been into Cathedral since the Carnival Bizarre era, really, I think. I think he dug Ethereal Mirror a little bit, didn't he?
Yeah, but I think Carnival Bizarre was like, okay, I'm kind of done.
Yeah. And so, like, of course, he just sort of, tossed it to me and said, I'm not interested. And we had all, I think, by this point, after being able to absorb, Supernatural Birth Machine for a couple of years, there's a sense of disappointment of, what will Cathedral do next? It's I'm kind of bored with them. Not really. I think expectations went really low at this point. And so when this thing came out and you put on a song like Voodoo Fire, at first you're like, oh, okay, typical kind of, Cathedral cheese. They're definitely in their kind of like disco, B-movie horror kind of thing. But there's something that happens in the middle of that song when the voodoo drums do come in. It's like, to me,
there's a bunch of a bunch of hand drums, and just it actually feels like it's got
creative,
they've got some kind of creative impetus now to do something different, and even if it is to follow all this crazy Knights Templar crap, then so be it.
Sure. And when they launch out of that, like Lee does some of his heaviest vocals that he's done in a couple of records. Resurrection. I mean, he's really like hitting a low tone, and then some of the soloing and stuff in that is really awesome. And there's another song on there that, as I reviewed it, I remember getting to the song Dust of Paradise. It's a longer tune, and when you get near the end, it goes into a dirge, just utter bleak doom.
And I mean, as this was kind of, I guess, pre-real a ton of internet, but we were doing all this speculation, like, oh my god, this is totally going to lead up to this next big comeback, right?
Yeah. And luckily it did. It took them a couple of years to put together their next record, but the thing that comes out after Caravan Beyond Redemption is, of course, the Endtyme record. It's their last record on Earache. And there's a lot of stylistic sort of changes that are going on. They're working with a new producer, Billy Anderson.
It's got a way different. There's much more. It's more of a dirty, grittier kind of. I guess that was kind of his thing. I mean, he recorded Sleep and a bunch of other bands,
Melvins and different things like that.
So it was like trying to, do that like Slayer thing, interject a new producer, get some new energy into it. Maiden, everybody does this at some point, but they actually seem to get back to some of those roots of what really kind of get them going from the get-go, or the kind of the fire that kind of lit under their ass under Force of Equilibrium.
And Dave Patchett, they don't use him for this record. They use Stephen O'Malley.
I think that was financial issues.
Was it?
I think so.
Was Patchett pretty expensive to use?
Yeah, like Lee would have. I remember in either interviews or just talking to him that they'd have to really pull some strings to get him to get those paintings at a price they could afford.
And I think too, at this point, the relationship had devolved pretty well between Earache and Cathedral. I think Lee
which it seemed to do with, as soon as you put a couple, probably 3-4 records in Earache, nobody stays around.
Yeah.
I mean, Haunted just left. I mean, they can't keep their roster because they don't seem like they're adequate business people with their.
No, I mean, Napalm left. Carcass was pretty unhappy with Earache near the end, I think.
So their relationship with Earache was kind of dissolving, as was everybody's at this point, it seems like.
Sure. And so O'Malley actually adds something kind of different aesthetically to the band, because he had done kind of more, I guess, niche-y, cultish things like Burning Witch. He was
he also did a lot of the Emperor covers.
Yeah.
Remember, he used to do Descent magazine, which that kind of informed where Emperor's direction for their cover art kind of went, where you take all this classical, Albert Durr woodcut kind of stuff, and then mix it together with a bunch of this really weird kind of vector line style. That kind of became that was kind of his MO.
And I think the covers actually one of the Templar Living Dead kind of skeleton things kind of mixed in there. It looks like death with like kind of wings and different things.
Yeah, there's like a skull and then some kind of there's just a bunch of textured stuff. It's a very flat kind of 2D piece, which is
reminds me of Darrow.
Jeff Darrow kind of stuff.
Kind of stuff.
Artist.
Yeah, the hard.
I kind of like the back a little bit better, but
yeah, it's pretty.
No, I mean it's an interesting kind of. I guess they just want to try everything start over from the ground up and see what works. And I mean, is this when was this record now?
2001.
2001. Yeah, we've got we start with Melancholy Emperor, which we'll be playing in Horrors to Oblivion, which both like Horrors to Oblivion really, I mean, it kind of brings back that kind of like pummeling nature that Candlemass kind of, I think, influenced in on that.
And I was saying, like, on Horse to Oblivion, to me, like, this also, and I think this is like where Billy Anderson comes in. Like, he's not he's able to keep the doom elements that you want there, but he's also like very aware of some of the kind of places that Cathedral has traveled with some of the more psychedelic elements that they've sort of explored. And he's able to cut out the BS elements that shouldn't be there, but keep the ones that really work. And so what you come away with on these songs is I get this real like mid-70s Ozzy Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath kind of sound to it. It's not the like sort of Children of the Grave sort of repetitious kind of utopian blaster kind of riff, you know, but it's got this melding of sort of mid-period Cathedral psychedelic with the sort of early doom and gloom of Forest and Soul Sacrifice, and like it works. And it's like, you know, that's the beauty of what I think they're able to achieve on Endtyme is it's this acknowledgement of where they've been as a band and saying like, look, you know, Supernatural Birth Machine and Caravan Beyond Redemption and even Carnival Bizarre and parts of Cosmic Requiem, those might not be like the best things we've ever done, but if there are elements that worked really well in there that are kind of cool, and if we can meld them all together, you've got really the perfect mixture of Cathedral. And that's really sort of where Cathedral's been, I think, since that point with the last 3 records that they've done. Yeah,
they backpedal a little bit, but even with like Gary Jennings, as interesting of a guitar player as he is, he falls back on a lot of tropes.
He's very limited in some ways.
A lot. So I think what Anderson did on this, as far as like his lead tone, actually like muddied it up a little bit and added a little bit more gain, where it seems like a little more like harsh and explosive than I think it was in the past, where it just became repetition.
So let's hear a couple tunes there. And from Endtyme, we've got Melancholy Emperor and Horse to Oblivion. You'll be singing along with this one. So.
Final banging nights, fleets of hungry angels.
Apocalypse is coming today. Or was it supposed to be yesterday? The world is falling into its grave. Oh Lord have mercy, can we be saved? No!
Heard Whores to Oblivion from the Endtyme record, and also from the same record Melancholy Emperor.
Yeah. So, and where, like I said, they're going to kind of take this kind of sound, and they leave Earache, they go to Spitfire Records, and they do the Seventh Coming, which is brings back some of the Dave Patchett comes back.
One thing that really bothers me on that record is what they did behind the logo.
Yeah,
they do, like, this was kind of I think that Stephen O'Malley might have even done the layout on this over Dave Patchett, but I mean, Dave Patchett's stuff's so intricate to begin with, and it basically monopolizes every bit of detail on the cover, and then you do this really, it's almost like a pile of metal that you drop and then have throw the logo over the top. It needed a nice bold logo, and just the layout did not mesh well with me.
You almost have to kind of do LSD in order to be able to sort of interpret anything that's happening in this layout. Like, just to read the lyrics alone, the lyrics are white, and it's
a bunch of random textured shapes that are kind of like flat shapes that are thrown behind it, and it's bizarre. It hurts
the eyes.
It doesn't work for me
to sort of look at, and maybe from an artistic statement, it's kind of interesting to say, oh, they tried something new, but to me it didn't really work out too well.
I think it would have been more successful if they left Patchett off altogether, or just go straight Patchett and go back to like their more simplistic layouts. But
which eventually they'll do on their last record, which is
Garden of Unearthly Delights.
Unearthly Delights, yeah, which we'll talk about in a moment. But Seventh Coming, just a great record. I mean,
it's pretty. It's one that I usually, this later era of Cathedral stuff, I rarely put on. I usually go back and revisit the earlier stuff. It seems to be a little more focused, but this stuff's definitely worth, especially when it was coming out, and there wasn't so many repeat listens, because like, okay, every 3 or 4 years I get a new Cathedral record, and I'll listen to the hell out of that and put it away.
For a while.
And then since they haven't put out anything since 05, this last record, I don't find myself pulling those out quite as much. And actually, I think a really good alternative is Serpent's Gold, is that best of CD that's a 2-disc kind of best of thing that I think would be like fantastic just for people that are kind of into checking out what Cathedral's into, it's got a bunch of there's some demo tracks. There's like probably a really good just kind of best of first disc.
Yeah, it's got
which hits
stuff
all the points
from Force of Equilibrium all the way up to Endtyme. I think is where they lay off. Melancholy Emperor is on there. I know that for sure.
Yeah.
So. But yeah, that's a great. I listened to the heck out of that actually when it came out.
Yeah, it's just a really good comp
with that.
I mean that, and that's one thing Eric's been able to re kind of package all the stuff like the Carcass Choice cuts. I own every Carcass thing that's ever come out, plus BBC sessions and everything else. But that's a really great comp to throw in every once in a while. So
because they throw enough unreleased things on the Serpent's Egg thing. Serpent's Gold, but there's two different discs. One is Serpent's Gold, and then the other is like Serpent's Treasure or something like that.
The Serpent's Chest. Serpent
yeah,
Treasure.
That's what it is. Yeah, so
Side 1 and 2, yeah.
I think the Serpent's Chest is the unreleased stuff and some of the rarities, correct? And then the Gold is the greatest hits, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
So. And, I don't know if that's just a cash cow for Earache to kind of milk Cathedral after they're off the label, but if it is,
it's got
it works.
it's got some live stuff. I think this is definitely something that somebody should check out if they're just kind of a passing fan. It's just a really good collection. We've got Ride, Hopkins, Autumn Twilight, Soul Sacrifice. Stained Glass Horizon they've been throwing on off.
Wow. Yeah.
Off that, Equilibrium, Utopian Blaster. It's just a nice collection. It's got good liner notes and everything as well. So.
And a Dave Patrick cover.
Exactly.
But, the stuff you're going to hear on Seventh Coming, like Skullflower opens up with a, very much like a kind of a Caius-y riff that then sort of, it's like Caius run through like the filter of like Ethereal Mirror almost in a way.
Yeah, it seems like they're taking their typical, the kind of riff structure, but they're leaving notes out.
But then it kind of devolves into like a total Force of Equilibrium crunch, and it just kind of becomes pretty oppressive, which is cool to see them returning back to some of that stuff, because there was like a 3 or 4 album stretch there where they didn't do anything that was like oppressive. It had to have like this rocky kind of rock and roll psychedelic flair like added on to like everything.
Yeah, with heavy like disco.
Yeah,
stuff going on.
Gotta love the disco era of Cathedral. It's like it's not as good as the disco era of Kiss though. So
I don't know. I think I Was Made for Loving You or You Were Made for Loving Me is about the only.
Yeah, that's true. I guess that's what I hold up
tonight.
I just think of
I'm gonna see it in your eyes.
I think of Homer Simpson and Flanders driving in the convertible to Las Vegas, because that's the song that was playing during that episode. But so we're gonna throw out some Skullflower and then Aphrodite's Winter, both from the Seventh Coming. And Aphrodite's Winter, one of the things that Cathedral's always been able to do, especially in some of their early stuff, really to great effect on Voyage of the Homeless Sapien, is they have these moments where I kind of called it like this weird amalgam of medieval England minstrel music and like Victorian kind of like decadence. It's bizarre. Like it's like
stuff you should be listening to like in an opium den or something.
Yeah, exactly. With like caterpillars talking to you and stuff. So it's got a lot of those kind of elements, and then it kind of grooves into kind of an amorphous keyboard sort of end there at the end.
Yeah, the good old amorphous build.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of psych prog kind of breakdown. So enjoy Skullflower and Aphrodite's Winter from the Seventh Coming.
It's like a cancer, yet I crave the disease. Mesmerized by her strange power, beauty and death in union. She blossoms in the 13th hour. Skullflower. Frozen land, mesmerized by her arcane mystery. Goddess of the underworld, called Queen of Lost Beauty. Gazed upon Earth's battleground at mankind's misery. With her sadness came love's death as the violence slowly ceased. Weeping tears of darkness crystallized the earth. As water cold her grief chilled away her mirth. Frosted armies paused in war, now wearing bits of snow, perishing forever. Forevermore, her bite numbs to the bone. Housed in caves, men of peace rest in these times of woe. Shaking in glass coffins, waiting for the sun to glow. Cast her spell on earth, and all emotion died. Her languid heart told the skies with love's dim
That was Aphrodite's Winner
and Skullflower
from The Seventh Coming.
Yeah, and that leads us near the end here with the last release that Cathedral has put out back in 2005.
The Garden of Unearthly Delights.
And this is one, like, when it came out, like, I really, like, gelled on this tune that we're going to play, Tree of Life and Death. Some of the stuff after kind of, like, all blended together the way that I would listen to
the
it in
Manslayer.
Yeah. There's some good album titles on there, but the one that really stood out to me on it, and obviously we don't have 26 extra minutes, but is the what's it called? The Garden.
The Garden, yeah.
And it's kind of their sequel to Voyage of the Homo Sapien almost.
It's got a 26 minute.
It's got a lot of different cool musical things going on, and it's very much rooted in like kind of the krautrock, King Crimson meets sort of Mellow Candle folk meets.
They're starting to pull some more influences outside of just the kind of typical stuff they have in the past, I think, with this one. And I think the reason we haven't seen another record is because they don't know what to do.
I was going to ask you where you think Cathedral's going to go from here, you know?
I mean, look what... it wouldn't kill them to do some touring.
Yeah.
I mean, they got a pretty hefty back catalog. I mean, it's the same with, like Bolt Thrower. See, Bolt Thrower is a different case, though, is you expect the same kind of thing, and you don't want to be... I guess you don't want them to like get really crazy and experiment because then it wouldn't be Bolt Thrower. And Bolt Thrower's last record, they recorded some and they shelved it because they weren't happy enough with it.
Yeah.
And I think that's perfectly valid as long as as long as they don't break up, because then I'll start crying.
But Cathedral, I think there's been this like growing expectation that every record they have to sort of like add a new element or kind of recreate something that's unique. And
I really don't know if they need to put any more records out.
Yeah.
I mean, unless they do something akin to what like Paradise Lost has done, where they experimented in their college years, and now they're settling down with their family, and they found out that that metal's pretty cool after all, and let's get back to some of this doom stuff. And Gregor can pick his guitar up, put the stupid keyboard down.
You mean Gary? Oh,
I was talking about Paradise Lost, where they actually come back with In Requiem and the one before that, which is escaping me right now. Paradise Lost, and there's also the one before that. There was a slow build back to
it had the orange and black cover.
Symbol of Life, which had some really good kind of like leadings up to that, and I would like for Cathedral to do that, but I don't know if it's possible anymore.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's necessary either, if it's just me wanting to get more Cathedral records.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know, could Cathedral go into like an angle where like a heavier angle, like say where Electric Wizard's gone in the last couple records for Wizard? Could they
I don't
get
know,
into
that? Wizard works. I mean, they work off disharmony, and Cathedral has always worked on harmony, even if it's slow and drawn out.
Yeah. And
Gary Jennings is a very melodic player, not really dirgy as much as back in the day. And I think Adam Lehan and Mark Griffiths had something to do with the direction of that as well.
That force of equilibrium and
I think Gary's more or Gaz Jennings is more comfortable in that kind of melodic Iommi kind of realm.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, at a certain point, I mean, Black Sabbath could only take that sound so far before they had to kind of essentially just kind of throw in the towel, and they've sort of reinvented themselves in different incarnations, with the Dio era, the Heaven and Hell kind of stuff, and that stuff's all great in its own self, but
I'd almost like to see him go back to some weird hybrid of like do something like Winter meets Grind meets like bring something like completely unexpected back. I mean, because he had pretty deep punk roots there for a while.
Oh yeah, I think it'd be really cool.
Like kind of bring something like that along with this
crusty doom kind of thing.
Just like a really dirty, quickly, hastily produced record that was just full of energy.
But I just don't. I don't know if I could see the other three guys being down with doing something like that with Lee.
Well, I think the band's basically it's Gary and Lee, Leo Schmee, the longtime bass player now, and Brian Dixon. I mean, I think I know Dixon's a cab driver. I think he just likes the music. Yeah, it would be interesting to see what they do when they do something, in the next time. And if you do get a chance, I mean, Cathedral is great live. They put on a sweet performance. Yeah. We had a great opportunity to see them out in Jersey and hang out with Lee beforehand, drink a couple beers with them. Yeah, luckily I got to see him twice. I saw him on the Oh, Jesus,
Gods of Grind?
No.
Grind Crusher? No.
What the Ride album? I can't even think of it now.
Oh, Ethereal Mirror.
Ethereal Mirror. It's we've done this for a while now, guys.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think he opened for Halford or something ridiculous. Okay. But no, they've always put on a fantastic live show. It's just, I think they'd almost be one of those bands that would be more better off if they would have not. They could have more space between records. Mm-hmm. I think right off the success of Ethereal Mirror, if they let it stew for a couple years and then try to go fresh at it.
Columbia was pushing them to kind of,
they've never been at a loss to put out material, but I think it's just a matter of censoring themselves. And I mean, put out a record that only has 6 songs on it.
Yeah, we're okay with that.
Yeah, you don't. Not everybody needs a 78-minute record.
I mean, Force of Equilibrium only had 7 songs on it.
Yeah.
So, but Tree of Life or Death, the closing tune that we're gonna kick things off. It's got I was telling Mark, kind of like if Candlemass was doing like a psychedelic riff or something. It's got that sort of depth.
Yeah, and this does have that. It's
crunch.
Got that feel of stuff they're doing off of Force of Equilibrium, but it does have. I mean, every time
it's a little quicker though.
Yeah, and every time they're not hitting, they're not holding. Like if anybody plays guitar, if you have the amp up loud, you take your hands off the strings, you get that weird feedback. Mm-hmm. Like just there's a lot of that happening on there in the back. A lot of like string scratches, and there's a lot of that noise coming into it. So that would be an interesting direction if they exploited that a little bit more. I think.
Yeah, and you'll even hear them kind of do a breakdown in here that's akin to some of the older like Sleep, early High on Fire kind of stuff.
Yeah, really repetitive. Just kind of,
which is cool.
Getting your head rocking.
Maybe they can do something more with this type of sound, but we'll see. I mean, I think in a way, like especially on a tune like Garden, which is 26 minutes long. I mean, I think they almost sort of blew their creative collective cosmic load in a way, and it's gonna be hard to come back from that, but. Anyways, we hope we've satisfied your later Cathedral needs. If you have later Cathedral needs, some people are pretty satisfied with the early stuff, but there's some valuable things and some kind of hidden gems throughout here, and it's a very controversial era, but I think when you kind of try and put it in perspective, maybe it makes a little bit more sense as to what was sort of happening. But shoot us a line, requiempodcast@gmail.com. Let us know what you thought of this era or what you thought of the show or anything.
Yeah, and check out the website, requiempodcast.com, where you can we'll have links for you to buy most of the CDs you've heard on the show. Plus, if you do it through our link, we'll get a little kickback, which helps with our operating costs, which is always helpful. But also, it's great to get iTunes reviews, or if you want to give us a plug on your blog or whatnot, that would be fantastic.
Yeah. So for Requiem Metal Podcast, I'm Jason,
and I'm Mark,
and here's Tree of Life and Death.
There are no more witches since we stopped burning them. He was wrong.
In the garden of creation stands a skeletal tree, hanging from its branches at the birth of Adam and Eve. Blossomed in mutation, running through centuries. Tortured minds, heinous crimes, blame God's family.
existence, hanging from temptation's tree. There's a carnival of mutations growing from man's fated seed.